So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Black Alumni Society members, family, friends, and community. My name is Asghar Ali, your workshop moderator for this Piece of the Pie investment workshop. Thank you for joining us today. I'm a proud grad of the Miami Herbert School of Business, a Miami native now residing in the Northeast, where we are contending with yet another snowstorm, so forgive any weather-related interruptions. I am a past president of the New York Canes community and currently vice president of operational risk data management at Deutsche Bank. Also at Deutsche Bank, I am involved with their diversity and inclusion leadership initiatives, a member of the Black Leadership Forum as well. I'm also a father of two mini humans, which at any point in time are liable to make an appearance. So again, please excuse that. They are 4 and 6 years old. Also joining us today is Marcy Hibbs. Marcy is a financial advisor with Edward Jones, with over 20 years experience in the financial services industry. She holds a Series 7 registration and life and health insurance license. She has worked in the insurance and financial services industry for over 2 decades, building personalized investment portfolio, with strategically designed to improve each client's financial future. Marcy serves on the board as president-elect of Broward County Canes Community and is a homegrown hurricane from Fort Lauderdale. She is recognized for her professional and volunteer activities by the South Florida Business Journal's 40 Under 40 and as a mentor with their Biz Women's Mentoring Monday series. Recently, she's also chosen as a life work leadership coach for the National Christian Foundation. Marcy is passionate about helping people traveling internationally on volunteer missions, efforts to many countries around the globe, including Australia, South Africa, Jamaica, Peru, Brazil, the Bahamas. Spin the globe around, she's been there, and many others. She's also volunteered with Feeding South Florida, assisting their COVID-19 relief efforts with people in need in Fort Lauderdale. So thank you very much, Marcy, for being here with us.
Thank you.
And last but not least, I feel like we need Sebastian to do the introduction here, Kelly. We've got Kelly Jennings, an advisor of the Branding Wealth Management firm, a proud graduate of the Miami Herbert School of Business with a bachelor's in finance and management. Kelly has an executive certificate in financial planning from the University of Miami and is a CFP practitioner. Kelly played professional football for 6 years with the Seattle Seahawks and Cincinnati Bengals, but above all, he values relationships he was able to make with fellow athletes. Kelly's passion for people led him to Jackson, Mississippi, where he earned his master's in therapy from Reformed Theological Seminary. His finance and counseling background gives him a unique perspective and skill set in the financial planning industry. He's married with 6 kids, has an active role in homeschooling with his children, as well as nurturing their spiritual growth. Kelly enjoys reading, sports, and spending time with his family. Kelly, again, thank you for joining us today for this incredibly important conversation.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So before we get started, just a little housekeeping. The chat feature will be open throughout our session. You should see it in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We ask that you share your questions via the chat feature, and we'll do our best to respond to all of your questions as time will allow. So thank you again, and let's just jump right into it, guys. Again, the topic of our session today is a piece of the pie, and we all want a piece of the pie, right? But the latest information from the Brookings Institute indicates that as of the second quarter of 2020, Black families, who account for about 13.4% of our population, have held just about 4% of our total household wealth. Can you help us understand the fundamental difference between having an income and wealth and why it's so important to establish a game plan? And we can start this off with Marcy, and then and Kelly, you can add to that as well.
All right.
Okay.
I think many of us think of income as money that we're using mostly to pay our bills, expenses, discretionary spending, and different categories like that. On the other hand, to build wealth, you really need a targeted plan of investing. And, that's one thing that in our culture, I think many of us for generations were raised with a certain degree of fear of putting money at a bank or giving money to someone else and just losing control of it. And what if I don't get it back? Or what if it disappears? Or what if the market drops? And I think that's one thing that that's one big hurdle that we really need to overcome, because keeping money in a savings account, or, in old school, you would hide it under the bed. You're not going to get wealth that way. You really do need to have your money working for you in order to gain any sort of significant wealth.
Yep.
Kelly, what are your thoughts?
Same. I love how you describe that. Like, our income is we talk about income versus wealth, where we're out working, we're bringing in that income. You're trying to create margin, if you will, with your expenses and all those things to have cash flow to be able to invest. Well, in my opinion, that cash flow is what you start to build wealth. And as I like to think about wealth and with dealing with people and in my reading, wealth generally takes time. I know we kind of go for that kind of everybody, if I could just hit it real quick and have all my money flow in, but 9.5 times out of 10, that's not the way it works. And it just takes time. And I think that's what it is. And as we talk about community, is thinking long range and taking that time to actually grow wealth, where you're not necessarily at this point working for money, your money is working for you. And then, as you mentioned as well, Marcy, is having a plan. It's, think about football. We never went into a game without a game plan. We knew, had some idea what we were going to do. Now, sometimes we got punched in the mouth along the way, things didn't go right, but we could always go back to that game plan at halftime, make adjustments. And that's the same thing. When we get off in life, things change, you have children, and so to have a game plan to take you down that road is what I think we really need to focus on.
And I think Kelly made an excellent point, stressing the time factor. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many calls we got within the last couple of weeks on GameStop from our clients calling, because like, okay, should I get GameStop? Should I get Game? No, you shouldn't get GameStop. That ship has sailed, and when you're looking for that quick fix, think of it this way: when it goes up super fast, it's a good chance it's going to also go down super fast. You really need the patience and the time invested in the market to gain true wealth, as Kelly was saying.
Yeah. And what comes to mind as well, we're just real quick, is a copper beech tree. I remember hearing a story about a copper beech tree where a guy had bought a house, they were planting plants, and he went to the guy and said, "Why don't I see a copper beech tree?" He said, "Well, that takes 100 years to fully mature and to grow." And he looked and said, "Well, we better get to planting then," because it's not necessarily even thinking about yourself, it's thinking about the next generation. And so they need to see you exercising the patience and the time to think 170 years from now.
Right. And thank you, Marcy. You brought up a great point, because right now in the last 12 months or so, I think everybody thinks that they're a financial guru. And I think it's incredibly important that people realize that this is not a game that you're playing for the 1 year, 2 year, 3 year horizon. This is something you're talking about, wealth building, which is generational, right? So important, Kelly, as you mentioned, to have a game plan before you even get into the game. I want to jump on to, I guess, what we could have led with here, but this is the fundamental question about getting into a relationship with an advisor, right? The Black community, again, has historically been excluded from these opportunities of even having a discussion about building wealth, right? Go back to the exclusion from the GI Bill of redlining, and then burdened with discriminatory lending terms, which have disenfranchised people, making them feel, or Black people, making them feel as though wealth building was something that's unattainable, right? So how do you go about telling members of the Black community or explaining to them and helping them learn that a financial advisor is something that they can attain. They don't have to be a seven-figure account. This is something that they can start from small and build up. How do you go about establishing that relationship with members of our community?
I give the wisdom to Marcia. Let her go first.
Sure. Well, I think a big key for that is starting early. When should I start planning? Today. Don't worry about yesterday. Don't worry about whether you're 30, 40, 50. If you haven't done anything today, is the best day to get started. Because some time in the market is always going to be better than no time in the market. So, I think that's one thing. Don't beat yourself up about the past. Just move forward and do what you can do at this point.
Yes. And to piggyback off that as well, is Marcia, start today. Matter of fact, start yesterday. And the one thing that when I got into the industry that I remember just kind of was a big eye opener for me was when I learned all this information, I was like, my parents could benefit from this information. But the financial world can have these large minimums that you're supposed to have. But there are advisors out there who will either do stuff pro bono or just, say, I'll help you just get started so you can get on a trajectory. And sometimes you just have to make more than one phone call. If you call someone and they're like, no, we can't help you, or no, we won't help you, keep on keeping on, as my grandfather would always say, and go find another one, because there are advisors out there who could help you get on the right track. You may just have to look a little bit more if you don't have these minimums that are out there at some firms.
So help people understand, and I know this isn't, I'm throwing a little bit of a curveball at you guys, but what are some of the minimums? Well, not necessarily an account minimum, but what are some of the minimum charges that somebody can expect when they engage in a financial advisor relationship? So
I'll let Kelly first.
Well, and every firms are different.
Everyone's different.
Like we have a planning fee where somebody comes in, there's a fee to do a basic planning. We have different structures of a type of plan. If they're investing with you, there's an asset under management cost at certain firms. Certain firms have an hourly rate. Just some have a base fixed cost on certain things. So it's really asking that question of what are your minimums, or how can I get started? And some firms on their website will say we do pro bono work. There's a certain category you fall in, and if you fall there, you fall there. But the best part about that is if you get on that and stick to it, you'll get out of that race and actually get where you can have more significant help, if I could call it that.
Right.
And you can speak with the advisor, and they can, because you should be more than one option, as Kelly was mentioning. You could pay via your asset balance, you could pay, with an upfront chip sales charge, but discuss that with your advisor and have it tailored for whatever's right for you. So it's not for you to have to go into whatever they're giving you, but structure it so it's personalized and that it's going to make the most best sense for you specifically.
My reason for asking you that question is again, this stems to the fear of engaging in that relationship. People say, oh, advisors are too expensive for me to afford. And I think you guys hit the nail on the head, is that there are so many different tailored programs that there's something for everybody, right? So thank you for that. And so one of the questions we have actually from our audience here, our virtual audience today, I'm a student at the University of Miami. I'm a freshman, a sophomore, junior, maybe looking towards graduation. Now, as a parent of one of those students, how do you suggest that I get my child, or the current student, how do you suggest that I get him interested in establishing that relationship and establishing that wealth building mentality?
There's several different ways that students can get involved and, tip their toe in. One of the first ways is if they're a student and, maybe a junior and a senior and also working. A good way to get started would be to start investing in your 401k through that employer. And the benefit of that is most 401k employer plans will have a certain percentage that they'll match. So that's putting in your money and then also getting the advantage of the employer match, which, you know, it's whatever you're putting in times 2 sometimes. Yep. So that's a good way to start. Also, you could open up your own account. If you're not working, you can open up a simple brokerage account. And with the help of an advisor, you know, get direction on how to start and what to start. And, you know, maybe if you're, you know, just starting off, a mutual fund might be a great way to go. So there's that example. And then also another way is your parents could actually start a custodial account for you, where they can kind of help, again, with an advisor and help tailor it for you. And then, you know, depending on what age you're starting, at the age of majority, that account would transfer over into your name. So there's several different ways that you can kind of get started and hold someone's hand at the same time and get the proper guidance.
And I want to throw one more other vehicle out there. Is the Roth IRA is kind of one of my favorites. If you have earned income, you're able to contribute, and your money's taxed at the time that it goes in, but it then grows tax-free. And that's one of my, like I said, my favorite vehicles to recommend. Young student. And I think sometimes we get into that thing, oh, I may only have $10 or I may only have, you know, a little bit of money. Start with a little bit, because once you get a grasp, and talking about that plan again, of your cash flow and what the margin that you have, you can start squeezing. Well, you know what? Instead of this coffee today, I'll put that. You know, you just start working through some of those things, and you can slowly increase that, which you're also training yourself in a saving strategy like that. And that can trick you. I mean, what, college 2021, you look up 20, 30 years down the road, that'd be a nice chunk of change from there.
Now, let me ask you something. When you mentioned a Roth IRA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a financial vehicle that you would suggest that people leverage if they haven't filled all of their other buckets?
Yeah, I would say that that's, if you are working, that might be the first bucket to fill.
Okay.
Only because whether you put it in there or whether you put it in a regular brokerage account, the money you're investing into a Roth has already been taxed. So you've already paid Uncle Sam on those dollars, and now it's growing tax-free. And the beauty of the Roth is at any point in time, although you don't want to be encouraged to do this, but at any point in time, if you did have an emergency, your car broke down, or you know something happened that you weren't expected, you can take your contributions back out without any penalty. Okay. So, you know, and that, as opposed to the traditional where you would have a 10% penalty to take it back, you can take your contributions back without being penalized. It's a really nice feature that it can be growing tax-free. And at the same time, if you do have a hiccup and need access to the money, you can take the contributions back. And just to give an example, if you have $1,000 into a Roth and it grows up to $1,500, that $500 growth, that there would be a penalty on. But you can take the same $1,000 that you put in, and you can take that back out and put it back into your pocket if you need it without penalty.
Yes.
Very interesting. Now, can you expand a little bit on the custodial account? But now I want to create a custodial account for my 5-year-old so that they can have access to it in college. What is the benefit of that versus your traditional 529 savings account, which is strictly for education?
Sure, great. So the custodial account, basically, depending on the state you're living in, you can have access anywhere from 18 years of age to 21 years of age. The child can access it depending on the state. So you have to check with that state specifically. The beauty of this custodial is both the parent and the child can, get the information on it. Usually the parent is the one that makes the contributions. And when the child gets to whatever age, then now the child has complete access to it. Comparing that with a 529 plan, now the 529 plan is growing tax-free. Whatever money you take out, you can take out tax-free as long as you do use it for education. The beauty of that is it's not just for college. Like you mentioned, you have a 5-6-year-old. You could use that to pay for if they're going to a private high school. You could use that to pay for high school. If the person goes to a vocational school or a technical school, you could use that, and they don't want to go to college and they're 18 and they want to, get a Microsoft license. You can pay for that school and for that education. So there's a lot. And then of course you can also pay for a computer, you could pay for books, as well as tuition and room and board. So there's a lot of flexibility. And say you have 2 kids and one child doesn't go to college, you can always transfer it to another child, to a sibling's name, and use it for another child. So there is a lot of flexibility with the 529. And again, that's going to be tax-free as long as it's used for some sort of education. And it's a wide range of things that can be approved.
Right. And Kelly, let me ask you something in the family dynamic, which is your forte and your background. When parents come to you looking to create accounts and they're saying they want to have a long-term trajectory, right? What would you say is the main goal that you're looking to achieve for them? Is it that you're looking at college for them, or are you looking at generational? And what are the different tools that you would deploy for that?
I generally say my main goal for the client is the client's main goal. And that's trying to, so a lot of questions up front. Who are you? Where do you want to go? What do you foresee in the future? What do you want your children to do? Do you think they're going to go to college or not? Just those different things. And then just kind of, I think Marcia did a great job of laying out the 529, the UTMA custodial account. Some people even use cash value life insurance and those different things. I'm a fan of saying, I'm not going to say, this one thing works specifically for everybody. Right. Every situation is different. And so I think I can take any one of those 3 vehicles I just named, and depending on where the client is, set them up in a way that it sets the course for that long-term goal, depending on what that goal is.
Right. Now, that's a great transition to my next question here. Didn't plan it that way, but it worked out. Boomers versus millennials. Okay. What worked for one generation is not going to work for the next, given the increased financial burden of student loan debt and the difference in the types of employment with the emergence of the gig economy, right? We don't have these defined payment plans that are going to be hanging out there for us with pensions and so forth, right? So tell me about a little bit in the difference in approach, right? And, with your boomers looking at retirement and maybe will engage with the more traditional advisor relationship. The millennials now, they're looking at, different apps. For instance, they're looking at the Robinhoods and they're looking at the fintech robo advisors, right? What is the value proposition for an advisor, and what are some of the different tools that you use depending on the demographic?
I think so. Obviously, like you said, the boomers, right? They're retiring. So, and generally, the environment that we went through, the generation that we came up in, they kind of have a direction that you want to go. So you see a lot more. I see a lot more involvement with advisors. The millennial group, as I actually work with a few, where it's kind of a mixed bag. Where it's I can do the Robinhood stuff, or I can get going in that, but at the same time too, there's a learning curve. And so you run into, well, how much do I want to learn? And obviously that stuff is set up to kind of make it very simple for you as well. And some just like, I don't want to think about and have to wrestle with that stuff. And so I guess I say all that to say it's hard for me to kind of delineate as all of those tools. I've even worked with millennials who I can use a certain similar retirement structure things that we do for them as well. And so it depends, and it depends on where they are and where they're going to help answer that question.
Gotcha.
I completely agree with Kelly. I think at the end of the day, it depends on that boomer and that millennial. There's millennials that are right now independently wealthy, just because of things they've done, and they invested early and did whatever they did. And, and there's boomers who basically haven't done anything.
Right.
So, you really have to sit down and take each person's situation individually and look at it. So I agree with Kelly.
So let me ask you this, and for our audience out there, I want you guys to take out a sheet of paper because we're going to draw a little bit of a roadmap here. Client comes to you and they say, Kelly, Marcy, I want to chart out my financial future. How do you help them to organize and prioritize their different wealth buckets in the short, medium, long term? How do they go about creating that, or what do you suggest, I should say, they have a set aside as an emergency fund, so to speak, either in finite dollars or percentage of their total amount? And then how do you manage that accordingly?
Sure. Usually the first step is going to be establishing that emergency fund. And that usually is going to be, and again, it's going to depend on the individual, but it's going to be somewhere between 3 to 6 months. Typically, some people like to go 12 months. But generally 3 to 6 months you want as an emergency fund. Regarding savings, again, it's going to depend on that person and where they are. And, at the beginning, if you're starting and you haven't saved, you're going to start at a savings rate that's going to be at some degree higher than towards the end when you're closing in on your retirement. So to put it in a very general term, you might be looking at anywhere from 10 to 12%, 10 to 13% on a savings rate. But really I like to sit down with the person and look at where they are right now and then go from there, because they might already have their emergency fund established. Right. So we're not going to talk about that. Now we're going to talk about, starting with the plan and starting with the next steps, which, as you mentioned, is going to be your short-term goals. Another key fact would be life insurance. And again, it's going to depend on the individual. Do they have children? Do they not have children? Are they planning on having children? What's their health like? What's their longevity of their parents? It's a lot that's really we're going to have to delve into to get that plan set up for that person that's going to be right specifically for them. But, you want to have the risk management piece in there with the life insurance, maybe disability insurance might be a need, or long-term care insurance, liability. Those are always key factors to have on the risk front. And then you want to look at the short term, which is going to be your emergency fund and things of that nature. And then you want to look at your longer term investments, include annuities or different types of vehicles. But really you want to sit down and discuss all of those with the person and find out really what's going to be right for them, and then tailor it specifically for them so that they can get to whatever their goal is in the time frame that we want to make it there.
Yeah, I don't need to add anything to that. That's exactly what I would say.
So along those lines, one of the questions we have from our audience is, do you help investors that want to start a business? And what type of assistance would you be able to give to someone like that?
I'm going to defer this one to Kelly. That's not my forte.
Okay.
And, I'm the type of advisor, if something's not my strength, I'm actually going to refer you to somebody that is their strength. That's not my background, is helping people start a company. So I don't know if Kelly might have some more insight to that, but that would be one that I would probably refer to someone where that might be their expertise.
Yes. I would say the same. It's not my expertise yet. I've sat down with a few business owners and just talked about my level of expertise to how does it fit and what they're trying to do. Because, and also I've tried to start a business of my own, so I kind of know some of the underpinnings and how that works. And so I generally sit down with someone until we reach that level of like, you know what, that's outside my expertise. I want to recommend X, Y, Z, or that you go here or there. And so it's very similar to what Marcy said there.
Yeah, I guess when it comes to financial advising as a whole, if somebody is looking to put that cash to work within a short period of time, then you treat it as a short-term investment, right? So that would be something that would be low risk, that
Yes.
you would have access to, right? So in that regard, but then there's also your small business loan professionals as well, that you could go that avenue as well. So I wanted to jump back real quick into the family dynamic, and Kelly, if you can take the lead on this one. Those that have children who are, they're mid-career, the biggest concern that, I'm a parent of 2 young kids, right? My biggest concern, how am I going to pay for college, right? So what do I do knowing that is a massive mountain of cash that I feel as though I'm never going to be able to, put aside for them? Yes, University of Miami, I'm talking to you guys.
Great question. And there's so many different ways I think you can attack this. And I go back to what we said earlier, start now. And it goes back even the whole theme of what we've been talking about is having a plan. I always like to say, knowing where your flocks and your herds are. What's your debt? If you have a lot of debt, start eliminating that now. That can be one of the biggest hurdles. And I would say bad debt, credit cards, car loans, these things of that nature. But working there, attacking that, and also putting this money away, and kind of knowing your child and having those conversations with them, getting a bead of who they are and where you think they're going to go. And I always say this. Because I played football, I didn't have the opportunity to work, but I didn't have the cash. So if I had to get a job is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes I see parents who are almost about to destroy their own retirement future to put a kid through college. And that's somebody, if somebody wants to do that, that's absolutely their prerogative to do so. But I like to push in and say, you don't have to destroy your own retirement future. The child can get a job. There are loans now. And then also thinking about those loans, like, do I need to go take out $100,000 loan? How far that's going to put me behind? Really assessing a lot of that stuff and doing so. So quick answer, sum all that up. Start now, having those conversations with your child very early, and just know it, they can get a job and help. And I think that's great character building as well to get to what they want in life.
And I think an additional thing that you can do, and I have 4-year-old twins and an 18-month-old. So,
oh, wow.
We're having those conversations in my household currently. But I have clients that, maybe they're not sure about going into the 529, because what if my child doesn't go to school, or what if they become, an actor, or what if they get a scholarship and they don't need the money, right. And we've already bought their computer, and now, we have that 10% penalty to use it for something else. One technique that we use is, and again, this is going to be very specific for the person who has their portfolio in a specific way. But, I have a client and their traditional IRA is fully funded, and they're more than on pace to retire very, very comfortably. So we're taking their Roth that has been invested for years and years, and they're using that as a possible vehicle to fund their children's educations. Since their traditional IRA is already maxed out, not maxed out, but it's fully ready for their retirement. They're going to use their Roth, and then that way, if their child does get that full 4-year scholarship to Harvard, they can use the money in the Roth to buy the child a car, to reward them some other way, to take a family trip, and again, it would be tax-free. So, there are creative ways that we can structure it where you're not locked in to use something for college and you kind of have more options.
Gotcha. And thank you with that. Now, a lot of people, I get this question personally quite a lot. Many Black families are maybe looking for their first Black advisor, right? But they're having a hard time finding that Black advisor, right? Or finding an advisor that they trust. Can you kind of share with us on some things we should look for in finding that, and where can we go to find you all? Where can we go to establish that relationship? Can you? So I guess my question is that we haven't really been able to find that trust in someone, let alone any random advisor that comes to us. One reason being that historically there's been this mistrust within the industry that advisors are just looking to trade on their own behalf because they're making money on commission, right? So how do we establish that trust? What controls are in place on your side, right? And then where would I go to even find a Black advisor who I think would have my best interest in mind?
I'll start by saying, like, I'm not aware. I don't know if there's a specific place or how you go to find, type in Black advisor to find one. But I mean, it may just take some searching, if you will. Well, I mean, there are two sitting on this panel right here, so obviously you can look us up.
You found us.
But that's part of, and also too, I mean, even asking us questions. Are there more? Who do we know that we can recommend? I have friends who are in the industry, and just I remember statistically, like honestly, there are not many of us, if you will, in this industry, but yet it's growing. And part of that too is you have to take the time to ask tough questions. And like you asked the great questions, like what things are in place to prevent certain things. Look at the payment structure. Look at how the company's set up. Look at what some of those checks and balances are within the company. Commissions, we throw out commissions, and I'm kind of neutral when it comes to that in the sense of a person who knows what a commission is, understand what's working and what they're getting from that, and say, yes, I don't mind that because I want the product. I have no problem with that. That's the way of payment. And people do it, as long as you understand what you're doing. And so ask tough questions and ask around and try to find out. And Marsha, you may know specifically if there's a website or something like that where we can go find it, but I'm not sure.
No, I agree. I do not know. And it's always kind of interesting to me. And I guess the next time I should ask, because we've gotten several calls at my branch where, the person will call in to make an appointment and say, yeah, I found you on the internet and I'm calling because you're a sister. And I'm like, okay. But I don't know how they got to me. They found me on the internet, but I'm not sure how if they just, if they were interested in Edward Jones and they scrolled through pictures and saw me that way, or, I really don't know how they ended up doing it. But definitely the next time I get one of those appointments, I'm going to be, by the way, how did you find, specifically a Black female? Because, a lot of people, obviously are wanting another African American because we understand where you're coming from. And then on top of it, again, being a male dominated industry, a lot of people specifically prefer to work with women. Again, because somebody that understands where they're coming from might have the same, with the working and the children and the same dynamics. I actually just went ahead and I put the link to my website there. So that makes it very easy if anyone's looking to find me.
Now, let me ask you, what do you say to those families, and we may have someone in our audience today, who may be looking at estate planning for the first time, given that, the boomers generation we may be looking at the largest financial windfall in the history of recordings. What do you say to those families that are looking at estate planning, and when should they start estate planning?
I think that's always a good thing to start early. I think, again, the African American community has been in a habit of kind of letting that go to the wayside. I've had people say out loud, like, "Yeah, they can fight for it," but that's not the approach that you want to have, because again, that's a part of generational wealth and passing it down to your family, and not leaving assets in probate for years on end that possibly nobody can get to. So I think it's always important very early on to either establish a will or a trust, or and even if you think like, what do I have? I just have a house. You have a house. You do need to have a will set up to make sure that nothing's in dispute. I mean, that's the last thing you want to see, is for something to end up going to nobody because you didn't plan and prepare correctly.
I agree. Start now. If it's just a will, going through that whole probate process, family members fighting and all that stuff. And I tell families, do it now, have a family meeting, let them know what you did, let them get mad at you if you want to. And so you can say, it's my money, I can do with it what I want, and here's where I want it to go, and blah, blah, blah. So nobody's mad at each other, and just to get that ironed out. And it's very important, because relationships have been destroyed because of this. And I think a lack of knowledge in that too, understanding the probate process, and then estate taxes and all these other things that come with, just having a car. Who does it go to? Those things need to be ironed out. And I'm an advocate of having it ironed out by you, the owner, versus allowing the state to dictate that.
Right. I think the most pertinent example of the importance of having a will drawn up is, unfortunately, the passing of Chadwick Boseman. He didn't have his will done, and his estate now is stuck in probate court, just like you mentioned, Kelly. And Marcy, like we mentioned yesterday, with COVID, in the midst of COVID, the Black and brown community was the most hard hit community. And so how many of us passed away that did not have a will in place? And what are going to be the after effects of that? So, to your point, and a well point made, I don't think it's ever too early. And you always have enough assets to protect.
Correct.
with creating an estate. So thank you for your thoughts on that. So we had one question here from our audience, and I think this is very interesting. Have any of your clients come to you expressing interest in cryptocurrency? And how do you go about either incorporating that into a portfolio, or are you guys not there yet from an industry perspective?
Yeah, Kelly, would you like to take the lead?
I'm all about education in anything. So obviously, let's use Bitcoin as I think is the big one. I'm have been educating myself for like the last year, just getting more and more up to date on that, because more and more people are talking about it. People are using it now. And so our business, we don't hold Bitcoin within, any portfolios that we have, but I like for a client to be educated on what it is, how it operates, and what you can do with it. And if they hold or choose to hold it as an asset, once they're educated on it, then if we have a portfolio set up, let's incorporate that, if you will, into the allocation structure, so you know how it's functioning within your overall plan going forward. But my main point I want to make on Bitcoin is make sure you understand what it is, what you can do with it, and all those things before just jumping right into it. So don't end up in the GameStop situation as well, where it's like, man, this seems to be a big thing. Let me get some. Know what you're doing before you do it.
Right. Now, and Marcy, have you come across this at all within your planning, within your advising?
Sure. So that is not something that we recommend for our typical clientele. we're on the our tagline is the sensible investing. So we're very into the more of the protection part of it. And just because of the volatility, that's not something we recommend. Of course, it does have a certain place for certain people. But that's not something typically that we recommend in general.
Gotcha. Generously, right. I wonder if that will become more mainstream as the cryptocurrencies begin to become more and more part of our transactional life. Or if it does, I guess the jury's still out on that, right? So just as an FYI, and for our audience, from the investment banking perspective, the biggest hurdle is a regulation. So once they address the regulation component, then you could see a different or a different use case for it. But Kelly, if you guys are open to incorporating that into a customer portfolio, at least you're educating them on the possibilities and allowing that opportunity.
And I don't think as a business we're going to actually get to the point where who knows? But I don't think we get to the point where we will, recommend within our portfolio structure. But if someone's educated enough and handling their own finances well and wants to step their toe into it, be educated when you do it.
Yeah, agreed. The client needs to be very aware of the risks that they're going to be accepting before they do anything like that.
Right. And again, thank you guys for your input here. And so as we approach the close of our workshop here, I wanted to try and share some actionable steps that our audience can take to address these issues of importance and address establish their wealth building journey. Marcy and Kelly, do you have any educational or consumer resources that our audience can take advantage of that you can share either in the links here or that you can send post this workshop?
Is it resources?
Yeah, so any resources or materials, any educational resources that you may use in your own client conversations, or anything that you feel as though would be beneficial for our audience to look into later.
I know you said sharing in the link. Like, I don't have any, I would say, right on hand that I can just tap right into and put into the link. But if someone interested, I put basically, if you want to find me, there are 2 websites to find where we are. I'll also put my email address. And that way, if you're like, hey, can you send me some material? Send me an email, and I'm happy to just send you I learn by visual. And so we have visual things of kind of having, as you start to build your plan, having a base, then contingency plans, discretionary spending, and then legacy stuff that just kind of is a framework to help you keep that stuff in mind as you start to build a plan. So like I said, if anybody wants some of that info, I'll put my email address and I'm happy to send it to you.
Yeah, likewise. If you go to the website, the link I put, you'll see resources there. And feel free to email me as well if you have any specific questions on your current situation, and I'm happy to help or have someone from my branch reach out to you.
Great. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us today, and lending us your knowledge and expertise to the investment workshop hosted by the Black Alumni Society in celebration of our story of Black excellence. Again, for our audience here, please check the schedule of events for more programs scheduled this evening and throughout the day, as we focus Friday on educating our village and Saturday on strengthening our village. Later on this evening, sponsored by the Richter Library and supported by the Black Alumni Society, a discussion with author Ijoma Olu. So You Want to Talk About Race, in her latest book. It's free for all to join, and the link to register can be located in the reception area on the Hop-In platform. So again, Marcy, Kelly, I can't thank you guys enough for this conversation. I really hope that our audience has learned a lot. I know I have learned a lot personally, and I have a bunch of notes here that I was taking as we were all talking. So you definitely laid out the action plan. It's on us to execute as adults, as students, as parents, and so forth. So again, thank you for enlightening our community. Thank you for giving us the tools to succeed. Everyone, thank you for joining us today for this amazing event. I'm just checking one time to see if we have any other questions. I guess that was the sound alarm. So, thank you guys for everything again. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your afternoon and look forward to being in your company again tomorrow. Thanks again, everyone.
And thank you so much to the university for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to help the community and our fellow
Absolutely.
Canes.
Love seeing everyone.
Until we get to see each other in person.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.